everybody. In Module 1, we're looking at the whole idea of community, what community is, and how information organisations, particularly libraries, interact with their communities. One of the things that I've asked you to do in that module is to go into the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics census data, to learn a bit about your own community. And in fact, this is important for your first assignment as well. So I am going to just give you a quick tour of the ABS site, particularly the census material, because it's quite complex but enormously interesting, and it's not hard to use once you've had a look at it. So this is the ABS website, so it's just abs.gov.au. There's so much stuff on this page, so if you had a bit of spare time, you could have a look around it and you will find incredible things. For the purposes of learning about your own community, there's a couple of ways you can do it. I've just spotted this, and I haven't actually played with that yet, but that might be interesting for you to have a look at. But what I wanted you to have a look at in particular was the census data, because that gives you some really good detailed information about your own community. So if we click on census, this quick stats is what I would like you to have a look at. This is a really great way to learn about your community, and there are other ways in here as well. Some of them are really complex, and you have to have some pretty good spreadsheet skills to be able to navigate your way through them and make them perform to do things for you. But you can get them to do incredible things. If you wanted to go into that level of detail, that would be worth doing. For our purposes though, Quick Stats is going to do it for you pretty well. So I'm going to look up my own area just because it's something I'm familiar with. So what we can do here is look at the last 4 census data collections. 2016 was when we last ran the census, so that's got the most up-to-date information. So I'm going to stick it at 2016, and I'm going to put in my postcode, which is 3067, which is my postal area, and I'm going to click on Go. So this brings up everything about my postcode area. So this purple bit here is where we live, where I live, and this is the area that is all the statistics that come underneath this page belong to. So you can see it's a really small area, because we have a very small suburb. So the numbers are really little, but they are interesting nonetheless, because my library is right there next to Collingwood Station. It's Collingwood Library. So it serves all of these people plus a whole lot of, I don't know if I can move it, I can. There's also serves a lot of these people who live through here. The nearest library is up here in Fitzroy, and that's also part of the Yarra network, which is where the Collingwood Library sits as well. So if I was to be really thorough, if I was going to have a look at the different community groups that might be served by a library that sits right here, I would also want to look at these postal areas here as well, because that library, although it fits inside this postcode area, it serves communities from outside its postcode area as well. But let's have a look what we can learn about this one particular area. So at the top level here, we've got some really broad statistics about how many people live in this area, basic male and female breakdown, and a median age, families, and what types of houses we live in with income and that sort of stuff. So really, really broad. But then if you come down the page, then you start to get heaps more information. So the way you read this across is, okay, of all the people, 4,116 in this postal area are male. That makes up 50.2% of the total population of the area. Within Victoria, 2,908,077 are male, and they make up 49.1%. In Australia, 11.5 million are male, and that makes up 49.3%. So what we can read with that is that within my postal area, slightly above average are men. There are slightly more than average men living in my postal area, and slightly fewer women than average. No idea why, but there you go. And the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is only 30, so very, very low for this particular area. That's 0.4% of the population of the area, it is 0.8% is, across Victoria there's 47,000, across Australia 649,000, which is 2.8%. So you can see how it compares against the state and the national figures. Then if you just keep scrolling down, and I suggest you do this with your own area because it's really interesting to see who lives in your area, that age is broken down into these sections. So you can run your eye down there and think, okay, most people who live in my area are between 25 and 29 years of age. And the fewest number of people are 30, where are we? 153, is that the lowest? Oh no, down here. So the people between 75 and 84 make up the lowest number of people, which is probably consistent across the rest of the country. 1.1%, so slightly lower than the rest of the state and slightly lower than the rest of the country as well. So there's all sorts of things you can learn there about ages and who's there. So this would be important if you're running your library service and you're thinking, okay, who are my potential users? How many people are likely to be attracted to a pre-kinder baby story time? And so you'd think, okay, 0 to 4 is the people I'm looking at here. There's 324 of them served by this postal area. So they're my potential customers for story time. So that's going to tell you that's worth doing because that's a lot of people there. It's worth putting on baby story time. If there was, 5 kids in there, you'd think, maybe that's not worth the effort. Probably would be anyway, but that just tells you that there's a population out there that might be interested in a particular program that you're running. There was a program running at one of my local libraries over the weekend, which was called Beer and Books, and that was for people who are over 18. So again, you could look through here, and I think they targeted between 18 to 25 or something like that. So they might be able to say, okay, we've got a whole bunch of people here that might sit into that group. And so that's a big enough group of people to run a program for. So that's the sort of thinking you can get from looking at these sort of statistics. Then there's a whole lot of other stuff here. We can say most of us are married. There are more people divorced than separated. 165 have been widowed. Most people here have never been married. That's interesting. And that's probably because you could look back here and think, okay, a lot of them are young who live in this area. 20 to 24 is, I think, perhaps the third highest group in terms of age, and maybe they just haven't married yet, or maybe they never marry or whatever. But what it's telling you is that most people who live here aren't married. We can go down further. We can look at education, which is interesting. It might help you target information literacy classes perhaps, or it might help you work out what schools you might want to target to do joint programs with. Education level 3 through highest level. And this is an interesting one here. So this is where we start getting into things about who are these people that live here. We know some things about their languages. So we know where these people see themselves as belonging in terms of their ancestral pathway to where they are now. We know where they were born. So most people were born here. Then the next highest group is people born in Vietnam, which is really interesting because when you go into the library that services this area, they've got multilingual collections, and a lot of them are in Vietnamese. So my library has responded to the fact that the second highest population language group is Vietnamese. So they've made their collection reflect that, which is really good. Lots of other things that you can learn here: country of birth, religion, language other than English. So again, highest is Vietnamese, which is why the collections in the Collingwood Library, a lot of them are in Vietnamese. We've got some employment statistics, hours of work, types of occupations, the industry that people are working in. That must be one of them is me, 137. There would be 136 without me. Incomes, how they get to work. So you'll recognise these questions from when you did the census, if you did the census, because these are the questions that you were asked. Families, how many families have got kids? How many people are working within families? What sort of housing we live in? Most people live in a flat. So that might give you a clue about developing your collections perhaps, or maybe developing a program, a community outreach program. You might think, okay, we might want to run some programs about gardening in pots or growing vegetables in small plots or something like that. So that could help you design your programs based on information that you've got from the ABS. So I will leave you to dig through this. I suggest you go in and do one for your own area and just see what you can learn from it. Think about what you've learned, how it could influence the sort of community outreach programs that your library that serves your area might run, and also what they do run and what you know of your library and its collections, and is that reflective of what you can learn from the ABS stats. So I hope that helps you get started with using ABS, and there's a heap more in there, and if you've got time, just keep digging and it'll blow your mind how much information you can pull out of these statistics, but that should be enough to get you started. I hope you enjoy it. See ya!